It's Boo Fam, peace and blessing. This is Derric Rau Khu. And in this video, we want to talk about what is the role of the ancestors and spirit guides in African spirituality. What is the role of the ancestors and spirit guides in African spirituality? Now, before we begin, I want to first of all say that when I first started learning about ancestors and spirit guides, I really struggled with this concept. And the reason why I struggled with it so much was because like a lot of you, I was raised in the church. And in the church, I was basically taught to believe in Jesus and in God. So basically what that meant was every time there was a problem, every time something happened, every time there was something that, you wanted to occur, you wanted some kind of blessing, you were supposed to go in here and pray to Jesus. And through Jesus goes in here and takes the prayer, or takes you whatever it is that you're asking, takes it to God. Okay? So every time there was a problem, every time that something happened, you take it to Jesus. Okay? Pray to Jesus. And the reason why is because this is what is meant by Jesus only. All right? I followed that script for a little bit until my prayers weren't answered. And as soon as my prayers weren't answered, like a lot of people, I went ahead and I became real angry. I was like, okay, why aren't my prayers being answered? What the heck is going on? All right. And eventually I became so angry that for a minute I went ahead and I even flirted with atheism. Now, it wasn't until I started reading and learning about Kemetic spirituality that I found out that part of the reason why, or the main reason why, my prayers weren't being answered was because I didn't believe in Jesus. And because I didn't believe in Jesus, I wasn't able to connect to God. Now, of course, it goes a little bit deeper than that. The reason why I didn't believe in Jesus was because I didn't have a connection. I didn't have a cultural connection to Jesus. All I had was what people told me, what was alleged, what was claimed that what Jesus did. Jesus went ahead and did this, and Jesus did this. But as you can see, I didn't have no cultural connection to him. I didn't have no cultural connection or any kind of belief in Jesus. And because I didn't have a belief in Jesus, I didn't have a connection to God. Or in other words, I did not know God. I could not know God for that reason. Okay? Now, what happens when I went ahead and I'm doing this, if I didn't have a belief in Jesus, that meant that when I started going ahead and I'm praying to Jesus, okay, as soon as I'm praying to Jesus, well, basically, because I don't have a strong belief in Jesus, there's all this gap and everything. This gap between Jesus and God allows for there to be all kind of intrusive thoughts, all kind of contradictory and conflicting thoughts that basically entered into my awareness or my prayer space at the time. And that's what prevented my prayers from being answered by God, because I was not able to connect to God. In other words, I wasn't able to manifest anything because I did not have a strong subconscious belief in what I wanted to manifest. All right? So, to give you kind of an understanding of what that means, to kind of help you understand why that happens. From a psychological perspective, what's happening is that our subconscious basically does the opposite of everything that we do. Okay? It does the direct opposite. To give you an example of what I mean by this is, if I went ahead and I said, don't think about an apple, immediately you think about an apple. And the reason why you think about an apple is because that's your subconscious. Your subconscious automatically, by nature, does the direct opposite of whatever you tell it to do. That's the reason why so many people struggle with their habits. They say, hey, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to break this habit. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to exercise. And they do the opposite. Okay? It's because it's already in their program. It's that subconscious that's making them do that. So our ancestors along the Nile Valley, okay, our Kemetic ancestors, the Kemetic sages understood this. The ancient Kemetic sages, they understood this. They understood that, oh, okay, well, since the subconscious part of our being is going to do the direct opposite of whatever it is that we're trying to do, we're going to call it Set. And that's what they did. They referred to it as Set. Set is basically the adversary. And what it means by being an adversary, it automatically, by nature, it does the opposite of what you're doing. Okay? It does the opposite of what it is that you're willing yourself or what you're trying to accomplish. Unfortunately, that concept got confused and everything because early Christians went ahead, when they heard the word Set, they converted it and changed it to Satan. Satan became the devil. And the next thing you know, we're thinking the devil is some impish, red impish figure at the bottom of the earth, near the earth's core, coming up here tempting people or sending demons to tempt people and all that kind of stuff, to do all kind of wrong things. That's not what it is, okay? Set is the opposite. Set is, by nature, it is a part of you, okay? He is a part of you. And this is what you have to learn about, okay? Now, that's another story. Not going to even go down there. But because the ancient Kemetic sages, they understood that the nature of the subconscious part of our being is that it's going to do the opposite, and they called it Set. They devised a plan. They understood that if we go here and we think and we say that God, everything that God basically has done, everything that the God has basically done is in alignment, and it is ma'at, okay, and it is good, then everything that is not in alignment, that is in balance, is not of God, okay? Now, this doesn't mean that it's evil. It just means that it doesn't have the full power of God to do whatever, to accomplish something. So Set, from that perspective, is not evil per se. It's just that Set basically represents the part of our being, or the entity, if you want to say, that has a small degree or small power of God in order to do things, okay, in order to accomplish things, which is why Set must revert to doing all kind of illegal, criminal type of actions and behavior. All right? So if we understand that God basically is everything, God is good, okay? God is balanced. God is, like I said, God deals with alignment. The Kemetic sages went ahead and they looked at that and they said, okay, so our ancestors, for that matter, if our ancestors were ethical and they were moral and they accomplished great things, okay? If they were ethical and moral and accomplished great things, they must have done this through the power of God. And if they did this through the power of God, that means that if you go ahead and you start talking to your ancestor, whom you believe in, whom you already know, your ancestor will help you to connect with God, or they help you to know God, okay? Now, from a psychological, spiritual perspective, okay, what this means, well, before we go there, biologically what this means is our ancestors are basically, we have their memories. We have everything within our DNA from our ancestors, okay, because we are a product of them. But psychologically and spiritually speaking now, what this basically refers to, or what this kind of means, is that the ancestors, they are part of what Carl Jung, the psychiatrist Carl Jung, refers to as the collective unconscious. The ancestors are a part of our collective unconscious, okay? So when you go ahead and you are connecting to your ancestors, you're basically going ahead and you're connecting to those ancestral memories. You're connecting to that genetic code and everything that exists within you. All right? Now, what that means is that basically the ancestors and spirit guides, they basically play the role. Their role is they are the foundation of our spiritual existence. They're the foundation of our spirituality. Okay? When you start honoring your ancestors, what happens is that you basically are awakening a memory within your genetic code. Okay? You're awakening a memory that's within you. That memory, basically, what happens is that memory in turn, it awakens that ancestor. It awakens that ancestor within you and around you. Okay? It awakens that ancestor. That ancestor now plays the role of being an ancestor. If they're a lady or an elevated ancestor, they play an even higher role. They play a role as being a guide. They play a role as being a healer. They play a role as being a warrior. Okay? So this is where the whole idea of what they're calling in Western, like I said, in psychology and everything, where they refer to and call it our archetype. This is where the archetypes come from. All right? The archetypes are all coming from within us, but they're based upon the ancestral memories. And this is why it's so important to honor your ancestors and take it serious, because when you honor your ancestors, what happens is that all that wisdom that was taken away during slavery, during imperialism, during colonialism, during forced migration, during forced religion, all those memories, all that wisdom that was basically lost due to that can all be reclaimed. Okay? It can all be reclaimed. All it takes is for us to go ahead and do is just to honor our ancestors and take it seriously and listen to our intuition, follow our dreams, listen to what's going on, because that's where they're talking to us at. All right? If we go ahead and we do this, this is when you go ahead and you're able to connect with your ancestors and you're able to connect with your guides. So the ancestors, their role is they play the foundation of our spirituality. And this is the reason why there's so much pushback against us learning about this. All right? So hopefully that makes a lot more sense. Hopefully that gives you a little bit or a better understanding. Again, this is my understanding of how this works, and this is why it works for me. If you would like to know a little bit more or so, feel free to go ahead, drop a comment, drop a suggestion or so in the comment section in the line, okay? Before I go, the other thing I want you to understand, I wanted to tell you, is that some of you have been contacting me and asking, hey, where do we get the books and all that? If you want to know more information, you want to get the books or so, visit the Land of Cam website. Okay, visit the Land of Cam website. We had to go through a whole restructuring process. Part of the reason why is because, like I said, Amazon has been tripping a little bit, so we had to go through a little restructuring process. And like I said, you can get the books on thelandofcam.com. Okay. As always, if you got any comments, questions, or suggestions, feel free to drop me a line. Until next time, fam, head to poo. Peace.